What's up, St. Louis? It's your host, Luke Farrell of the STL Bucket List Show. The STL Bucket List Show is driven by Bomarito Automotive Group. Bomarito is Missouri's #1 car dealership with over 20 locations, so I guarantee that there's one in your neighborhood. Since the 1970s, Bomarito has sold over 1 million cars, and John and the entire team made us feel completely comfortable when we picked up our new vehicle recently for the family. So I can't thank the Bomarito team enough for driving this episode forward, and enjoy the show.
Hey, St. Louis. This is Michael Kennedy. I'm super excited to be here on STL Bucket List podcast, talking about our wine group, Fraîche wine group, based here in St. Louis, but making wine kind of all over the great wine regions of the world. Pumped to be here.
For 50 years, Bankhead and Firth Orthodontics has been proudly serving the vibrant St. Louis community. As a family-owned and operated practice since day one, the commitment to excellence and personalized care runs deep. They believe in giving back to the wonderful people of St. Louis who have entrusted them with their smiles. Step into the 5 locations across St. Louis with modern offices equipped with the latest orthodontic technology. Their 3 amazing doctors are dedicated to providing top-notch, innovative treatments tailored just for you. Join us in celebrating 50 years with Bankhead and Firth Orthodontics, where your family becomes a part of theirs. Schedule your free consultation today and let them help you achieve the confident, gorgeous smile that you deserve. Because in St. Louis, your smile is your legacy.
If you want to hear about St. Louis, tune into the Bucket List Show weekly. Hear what Marissa and Luke say. It drops every Wednesday. Got a dope new guest every single week. Buckle up for the ride. Who's it gonna be? Who's on the show today? They rep St. Louis. What to do in the loo on a late night, or maybe what to do on a date night. Yeah, Bucket List has you covered. They know what's going on. What's going on? They'll give you, hey, 18 different things to do, or 19 if you need one more to choose. Yeah, this city is a place we call home. A place we call home. Yeah.
Glasses are fantastic too.
Yeah, these are Sophie and Bald. We have a partnership with them. They're hand-blown crystal out of Austria. Just a fantastic small producer of glass that's probably about as great as it gets.
Yeah.
Zalto, Sophie and Bald. But yeah, we love them. We use them at the wineries.
So before we get into it, I want to welcome everybody to the STL Bucket List Show. We started off with a little wine today, guys. You know, it's Tuesday and it's almost 5 o'clock, so we got to get right. But we have, an incredible episode planned for you guys. Appreciate you guys for tuning in each and every week. But before we start, Michael, I kind of want to read a few things from your website that I found just to introduce our audience to what you do and let me talk about it so that you can kind of expand on it. But so you guys were founded in 2018 by Michael, who with one goal, to be a family of wineries with a common thread of small production, site-specific,
Terroir.
Oh, terroir, yeah. Driven wines from California, Oregon, Washington, Italy, and France.
Yeah.
So
that pretty much
explain
nails
that.
it.
Explain what that means, because that was your ethos on your.
Yeah. We started Fraîche Wine Group, which is kind of our portfolio company of wineries, 2 years after we started our first winery. Mm-hmm. But I think the ethos for the company was created from who we were, as opposed to writing something about what we wanted to be. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of unique. We basically had started the company 2 years before we wrote any mission statements. But essentially, Fraîche Wine Group is a family of wines that are really meaningful to us, and each one of the 4 wineries that we have has a real reason for being, all with a thread of style and soul that mm-hmm. is who we are, but just in different regions with different styles, different kind of prompts behind what we're making and where. Mm-hmm. So we have obviously some really fantastic wines made in Napa Valley. This is kind of where we started. Mm-hmm. Then we expanded to Bordeaux, and then Oregon, Washington, back in Napa, expanded a little into Sonoma, and then Tuscany in 2020, and then in 21, we started working in Provence. So we have really bad ADD if you didn't catch on to that.
Yeah, you're just like, let's go here, let's go here.
But no, we just want to explore like the great regions of wine. We don't make wine in every region, of course, but where we do, we try to be really cool.
Is that unique to have like a family of wines, but to be spread out over those, or are most companies are most people in your space like super hyper niche to their regions?
Yeah, I think it does exist. It's usually, billion-dollar companies who do it. Kendall Jackson has a fine wine division called Spire Collection, and they have Bordeaux and Tuscany and Napa and Sonoma. I think we're definitely the smallest, least wealthy company to do it. But
because it's a lot more heavy lifting to do that.
Yeah, it's hard to make things in different places. I think where we don't have some of their strengths, which is size and global distribution channels and all of this, we make up for that in the fact that we're hand touching everything, and we have a really small but incredibly passionate team.
In the speed to market, you're probably a little bit more efficient because
we're
of how
nimble.
Small your team is. You can be like, hey, let's do this, let's switch.
I'll be like, Ellie, we're going to change direction on this and today.
Yeah, which at a company like you
which
mentioned
she just
would
loves.
Take a year. They already know what they're doing in 2028.
Yeah.
Which is nice in theory, but also we operate that way where we don't. Next week we could be doing a completely different thing, and I think that's exciting and fun.
It allows us to take opportunities as they come. We kind of like keep our radar on for what we're looking for. We definitely have like a long-term vision and a very short-term vision, and we kind of let the midterm evolve as we go.
That's interesting.
And I think our vision long term is to be one of the highest quality, most meaningful, most caring wine producers from the great regions of the world. And I think we're well on our way to doing it. We make a ton of mistakes. We do our. I'm really proud of every wine we make. I don't think I imagined we'd be in a place where every single bottle we produce, I'm extremely proud of. I can't say a lot of people feel that way in the industry, especially on the bigger side. But for us, we don't make a wine unless we're obsessed with it. So as we've grown, we've kind of, ebbed and flowed and pivoted on certain things. But in general, we've had a really good compass toward, extremely high quality. We don't make a ton of affordable wine, which bums me out. But it's really hard to make affordable, amazing wine, just with the way the world is. So, I don't know.
We kind of take that and take those ebbs and flows, but I want to get it more into the process and like you said, like your travel and stuff. But before we do that, I kind of want to take it back to Michael growing up and your childhood, and then also, your ties to St. Louis, because we are on the STL Bucket List Show. Yeah. So you mentioned all these places that are very far from us here in the Midwest. So if you could give us a little background on you, kind of growing up, family, and your ties to St. Louis.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so grew up here. I went to, a really good middle school for boys here in town, and I had a French teacher while I was there who started talking to me about, she was from Bordeaux, France. This was Chaminade, and she was from Bordeaux, France. Her name was Chantal Morrissey, and she told us about baptism in Bordeaux when they put a drop of wine on the baby's tongue, and that was like kind of shocking to hear. And about food and how holidays revolve around meals and wine, and it was just a really interesting thing to be hearing as a 12-year-old. In fact, I think it's an extremely healthy thing to be hearing as a 12-year-old, because you're right, you're knocking on the door of kids drinking, and it was a really healthy understanding of what wine was. It was more talked about as tradition and food and culture, and less about something that gets you drunk. It does do that, of course, which I enjoyed.
But it's unique to have a teacher, especially as a middle school boy, when you're playing sports, you're just starting to date girls, you're doing whatever, and have that experience. So growing up in St. Louis, and
it was a huge part of who I am today. I mean, I think I've told that story probably 1,000 times now, but I tell it because it was really foundational. I mean, obviously I had an amazing family, really into, hospitality and family, events and gatherings and meals. We had dinner together every single night growing up. All these things were really foundational. As I continued to, become an adult and everything, St. Louis always kind of played a part in that. I ended up moving on to the Ritz-Carlton after college in DC and then on to Cayman Islands. But all through that, I think the Midwest foundation of what hospitality is, really warm embrace, not about like every single detail. Of course, those details matter, but it's more about how you make people feel. Mm-hmm. That was something I learned here.
Did you work in hospitality in St. Louis much in high school at all?
Not really. I worked at Cold Stone Creamery.
Hey.
I worked at my family had a little produce stand out in, actually not too far from here. Yeah. But no, I didn't prior to this. I didn't really have a huge hospitality, background.
So right after college, you went out and then you worked at one of the nicest hospitality places.
I actually came back to Missouri. Yeah. I couldn't get a job. I graduated in 2009. Mm-hmm. Started working for our friend's winery. They had just opened a winery out in Defiance, Missouri called Chandler Hill Vineyards. And it was kind of this incredible new concept where you could go to a Missouri winery, but, have Missouri wines and other wines. And I think that's what was one of their, other than the fact that it's a stunning place, it was one of their kind of like strong suits. Mm-hmm. Learned a lot, got to work with an incredible sommelier out there from St. Louis also, Allison Gorsuch. And then after a couple of years there, took the job in DC and kind of carried so much of by the time I moved to DC, I think I was 24. So, I had already kind of formed who I was, and then just brought that kind of humble Midwest hospitality into an East Coast setting. And it was kind of jarring for people. A lot of sommeliers at the time, this was in 2012, a lot of sommeliers at the time were still kind of, classical sommeliers, they weren't really interested in educating you. They were there to help you pick a bottle and sometimes make you feel bad. That's certainly not to mean all sommeliers did that, but it was the impression the guest had was, oh God, a sommelier is coming to the table. I'm going to spend a lot more on wine than I wanted to, and I was just trying to help them have a great experience.
Almost into like something and might be made to feel weird if they picked another wine that they're more passionate about.
You don't feel good about choosing that wine on the bottom price point, when the sommelier is there. So,
exactly.
So I tried to kind of turn that around, and that was pretty successful.
So you were young in that space then, because most of the somms that I see, at least in the St. Louis space, like if I'm at the Four Seasons or if I'm at a couple spaces around town, it seems like that there's not many young people. Were you a younger for that space, especially
I was really young at the time.
Especially at the Ritz brand,
Definitely at the Ritz.
Yeah.
I had a pretty great leader, Karim Kendegelen, who's now a VP at Fisher Island Club in Miami, which is one of the great clubs in the country. But he wanted specifically a young person who wasn't old and set in their ways. What he ended up with was a young punk from the Midwest who knew nothing.
That he had to, like,
but it worked
into.
out, because I think it was refreshing for people to have a different experience around it and not super pushy and all of that.
So that was 2012. So you worked for the Ritz, like kind of all over different ones. You said the Cayman Islands.
So I ended up managing the Ritz programs for the DC and Virginia hotel.
Okay.
And then after a couple of years there, I had an opportunity to work with Eric Ripert, who's one of the great chefs of the world. He has Le Bernardin in New York, and his second restaurant is Blue by Eric Ripert at the Ritz in the Cayman Islands. Yep. And through that, I got to work with Anthony Bourdain and all these incredible chefs through an event called Cayman Cookout. And it was just kind of the dream job for me with Ritz. And that again, I took a job I was heavily underqualified for. But I think just the refreshingness of not being pushy, I will say my ego inflated a lot when I got there, and I was often very humbled because when you work with a famous chef, you start to kind of think you're that quality, and you're not, you know, I mean, some people are, but I wasn't. But it was an incredible experience, and I think having that kind of you know, non-coastal viewpoint on hospitality was really impactful.
So before wine, I mean, you were like, obviously it seemed like you were always passionate from that conversation with your middle school teacher. But before wine, like, did you have another passion that you were set on? Because obviously you were in college and your parents probably wanted you to do something. Somebody wanted you to do something else. Was there a passion before wine, or were you always kind of dead set on being in this space?
Yeah, great question. My parents had no idea what I was doing. I was a French major at a pretty expensive college. I didn't, you know, I'd love to say I had some grand vision that this was all going to happen, and I didn't. And I'm really lucky that something did happen.
Right. Because you were like, okay, it's over now.
Yeah,
like once college ends, and you're like, okay, I still don't know.
I wanted to work for the government. I wanted to be a spy. I didn't even get an email back from my CIA application. So obviously that wasn't meant to be. My wife ended up working for the FBI, so she kind of had the dream job.
You get to live vicariously through her.
But no, I mean, I just kind of fell into it right out of college. I always loved wine. I studied wine at university a little bit, French major, came back. You know, it was a really tough time in the economy in 2009. And, you know, thank God for Chandler Hill because, you know, that thing I fell into ended up being, you know, my future. So.
Yeah, so you kept that going because you just like, and we think about these things in life, these small things that happen, like going to work at Chandler Hill wasn't obviously your ultimate goal out of this expensive French college or learning French at this college. But sometimes you learn some of the best things. And we were talking about Defiance and Augusta earlier in that area of just that warm area. And it's so beautiful every time you drive out there. You go down Double D. If you're coming from 94, it's just the best drive.
That's incredible.
And being out there. So what are some of the misconceptions about, you know, your trade and being a sommelier and stuff like that? There was a movie, it started to become more popular, you know? So my wife and I watched this movie, but when we started to get into food, I'm 28, but right around the age of like 24, when we started like actually be able to afford to go out to nice places, we started like fall in love with hospitality. And that's kind of why we started this brand. But we watched that movie and it just seems like this crazy intense, like hard lifestyle. And what is that? And I know I'm comparing it. You know the movie I'm talking about.
Yeah, of course. Somm. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. or the now I think there's 4 or something.
Yeah.
Fantastic documentary which kind of follows some incredibly talented, intelligent young sommeliers through the master sommelier exam. I'm not a master sommelier. I didn't go through that exam. I'm certified through the Court of Master Sommeliers, but I'm not a master sommelier. That process is really difficult. I mean, I'll tell you, thank God I did it straight out of college, because if I had to retake that test now, I just don't think I could.
You were fresh. Your brain was still
I still remembered how to study, write note cards, etc. But no, it's a really tough process, and you know, I think you asked about misconceptions. I think a lot of people think we know everything about wine. Something I tell people is the more I learn about wine, it's so cliche to say this, but the more I learn about wine, the less I know. I'll give you an example. The entire foundation of Component Wine Company, our first winery, stemmed from me thinking I knew something and realizing how little I knew. I was running a top 100 wine list in the world, and I went on a trip to Napa. And we were tasting with this incredible winemaker, Mark Gagnon, who's now my winemaking partner. But we were at Bryant Family, a St. Louis-owned winery out in Napa. And I must have been talking about something that I didn't know about, because he went in and poured me a glass of wine and asked me what it was. And I had no idea what it was. I'd never tasted anything like it. It was like medium-bodied, kind of gritty, a little bit kind of like rustic elegant, dark wine, spiced, some things I'd never smelled before. But it was Petit Verdot, which most people don't know what this is, but it's a small blending grape, but a very popular blending grape with Cabernet Sauvignon. So most of Bordeaux and Napa Valley at a high level of quality will have some Petit Verdot blended in, if not Petit Verdot, Cabernet Franc, or Merlot, the Bordeaux varieties. But I had read a million books. I had tasted a million wines that had Petit Verdot. I talk about it on the floor of the restaurant on a weekly basis probably. But I had never actually tasted it solo on its own. And so everything I thought I knew, I didn't. I was totally wrong. And I think that's the nature of knowing anything. But I think as a sommelier, it's when I realized, once I started to learn a lot, I realized I really didn't know anything. And so I started listening more than talking.
Exactly.
In fact, I promised myself I wouldn't do podcasts or give advice because I don't feel like I'm qualified enough to do it. But I do think when you go to a restaurant, the idea is, oh, the sommelier knows everything. I'm gonna look so stupid. I don't know anything about wine. I know what I like from Trader Joe's or whatever, but I'm afraid to ask a question, or I'm afraid to, look stupid. And that's just not true. Most sommeliers still, it's a lifelong learning process, and there's just so much sommeliers don't know. Mark Gagnon has a master's in winemaking from UC Davis. And he knows infinitely more than I know about wine. But we know very different things about wine,
Right.
So you could go a mile deep on one subject or a mile wide on 100 subjects. And I think sommeliers are really, really wide on knowledge. You could name any variety from any country. You could name most top producers from most regions. You could talk about vintage. You could talk about winemaking styles and everything, but very few sommeliers could go out and make wine.
Exactly.
So I think, to me, that's the thing I wish people knew more when they go into a restaurant is these sommeliers, they're working there because they love service, they love wine, and they want to talk to you about wine. They're not there because they want to make you feel bad or prove to you how much they know. I mean, some do, but it's really rare.
Right.
I mean, most sommeliers are literally doing this.
About it to do it every single night.
They do it because they love it.
So that's interesting.
So
that
go
you
talk
said
to
that.
them.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think that's like that with anything is, the more you know, sometimes the less you actually take action.
Yeah.
When somebody thinks they know everything and they actually aren't actually taking action sometimes, and that's why that guy hires you when you were 24, because he's like, I know he doesn't have any bad habits yet. He doesn't have bad habits yet.
I did have bad habits, but not as many maybe.
That's interesting. So yeah, there's so many misconceptions. It is daunting when they do walk up to you, because like with us as like mild, younger couple, we're like, I don't know, give us a bottle. And it's also like that thing is like, do I want to spend $200 on this, or should I get this? But so the name is pronounced Fraîche.
Fraîche.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to walk through that on my way here. I was trying to listen to stuff that you guys have put out.
Yeah.
Tell us about the name. What does that mean to you?
Yeah.
And Fraîche is a beautiful name for wine, in the fresh sense, but obviously means more than that.
That's actually what it means.
Okay.
I when back to the ignorance thing, when I first got into wine, I thought great wine was somehow mystically made or whatever. And the more I learned and sat with winemakers and went to these great estates and started, listening more instead of talking and trying to prove how much I knew, which I probably still do too much of. But I remembered hearing, especially in Bordeaux, I remembered hearing there was a kind of a common phrase people would say, or a kind of common reference people would make to all of the best wines, and it was a freshness. So whether the wine was 40 years old, fresh out of bottling, people would talk about freshness. And freshness, it's hard to really define in wine, but it kind of relates to having picked and pressed the fruit at an incredible balance. You could call it balance, you could call it freshness. I think freshness is more appropriate, but during the growing season, a grape goes up in sugar and down in acid. So if you start in the beginning of the season, it's really low in sugar, really high in acid. And then as it goes, I'm really simplifying this, but
This is good. I need
acidity goes down and sugar goes up. Think about like a banana. A really unripe banana is green and it's really bitter. And a really ripe banana is brown and it's really sweet and mushy. Grapes are the same way. All fruit is this way. And so what we try to do to make great wine is to thread the needle between unripe and ripe, right? And that takes skill, that takes taste, that takes experience, that takes an incredible amount of knowledge that I don't have, but thank God Mark does, and our growing partners. But freshness is kind of hitting the nail on the head on when to pick, and then making it in a way that retains that freshness and still lets the flavor complexity come through. And it's incredibly simple to explain, but also really difficult.
Right.
It's easy to understand because of the word. We all know what a fresh lemonade tastes like, and we know what a really sugary sweet lemonade tastes like.
Exactly.
You know, and so I think, you know, that's who we are. We want to make wines that are really fresh and long lasting, and I would say like timeless instead of on a specific trend. We're trying to make timeless rosé. We're trying to make timeless Cabernet and timeless Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
And same with branding and everything like that.
Yeah.
There's no trends in there.
I mean, we have some edgier things and we have some more classical things. In a way, classical at some point was probably edgy, so it's tough to say, but no, the term really does define a lot of who we are on the wine side.
So you've been featured in a bunch of stuff. It's all over the website. Forbes 30 Under 30 list, Wine Industry, Rising Star and Food and Wine Magazine, Super Somm by Bloomberg, bunch of stuff. Top Entrepreneur. I'm not hyping you up right now. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but you know, being featured in stuff obviously makes you feel a type of way. Does that make you feel accomplished, or do you get this sense of you know, like it's hard sometimes to be featured. Like we've been featured in stuff locally, and it's like, okay, like I just don't feel like I'm there yet. But when you get featured in there, like, do you get that imposter syndrome sometimes when you do get featured in things?
I live a life of imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
because I think what we know is we know all of our flaws, right? And we know like what we want to be, and we know none of us are this way, right? We talk about this kind of as a company, is like we know what we want to be as a company, and we're not there, but we're trying to be, you know. And I think I feel those same things all the time. I mean, I say the mystique of me is much better than what really is here. So it's been great having like our sales team travel and talk about Mark and Michael, because you know, the polished image of who we are is probably more impressive than the real deal.
There's a PDF on your website. You like pulled a little sales book out, and it's like black and white pictures, and it's super fancy.
Yeah,
you guys know the book I'm talking
about.
Which is really easy, accessible on there. I like that.
Oh, thanks. That's all Ellie. But no, I think it's true, and I think every single, you know, successful person I talk to feels the same way. And if you don't, you're delusional. I wish I was more confident, but and that's something I'm learning too, is confidence. Confidence is really probably more knowing what you are and what you aren't than thinking you're better than you are. Exactly. And that's been really helpful. It's good to kind of reconcile what people think you are and what you are, and be comfortable with whatever the middle ground is.
It's outside representation, but obviously these are amazing awards and write-ups, and they're great for business, and they're great for what you do, and it obviously means that somebody is noticing what you guys are doing. So I mean, it's incredible to see these and actually be able to because you're doing something that you're passionate about. And I always talk about passion as like the only way you're going to keep waking up in the morning when you have things going on, your kids are sick, problems at home, somebody, like, there's all these things. You have to be hyper passionate about what you do to get up here and want to do this. We've done this podcast for 124 weeks in a row. And there's a lot of weeks I don't want to show up here on Tuesday because I'd rather be at happy hour. I'd rather be at wherever else, but right here talking. But I'm super hyper passionate about having conversations with entrepreneurs and learning behind the brand, behind the story. But yeah, I just think that that's cool to know that. But we've been featured in things like locally here, and it's like, okay, like I just don't feel like I'm there yet. And I look at people that I look up to, but they probably feel the same exact way.
I can promise you they do. And so much of what you've accomplished just speaks to that humility to even say that. I think, what do you have? Almost 200,000 followers on Instagram or something. That's that's a really big deal. That's a really small percentage of people that have accomplished that. And I think, even business, I'd be shocked if anyone I follow on short of celebrities has, in the hundreds of thousands of followers. So, you should feel good about it. Yeah. Rest in the fact that you did do that. These are real numbers, real metrics. And there's a lot to be proud of. But I think it is healthy to have a little bit of, I don't think it's healthy to have the anxiety around,
Mm-hmm.
that the imposter syndrome of like, oh, people are going to find out I'm not as good as they think I am.
Right. But a
I
healthy
do-
mix of
yeah,
like
like-
confidence in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always equate it to like the followers as like people in a stadium. It's like, okay, there's 45,000 people at Busch Stadium, times that by like 4. And like all those people see our stuff every day. Now they don't all engage with it, but it's like if one person gets value from this episode, then, that's what it is.
So great.
One person that's passionate, that's local, that's young. So that's kind of what I wanted to lead into the next question is, you being an entrepreneur, do you come from a family of entrepreneurs? Did you learn that from anyone, or is that just something that you decided to do?
I mean, I had definitely some great influences. My dad was the CEO of a company, but not an entrepreneur. He came up through accounting. In fact, in a lot of ways, much more measured and careful than I was. I wish I had more of that. And then my mom was always, she's a preschool teacher, but, took a ton of my personality and risk taking from her and ability to go out and do things. She was always incredible at, knowing what she wanted and going and doing it. I had a really great couple of aunts and uncles that inspired me, but no, it's not an entrepreneurial family. I think there's just a screw loose up here or something. I don't know.
So what advice would you give? So there's a lot of young people. So our audience is really cued into that 21 to 28, 21 to 35, roughly like 70% of the people that follow us are in that age group. Is there any advice that you would give to, not even just in your industry, but just in general, coming from Entrepreneur in America by Business Insider and all these things, but really, like, there's a lot of people that are like, what advice, would you give to that person that's right out of college that has a passion that might be different than the norm? If you know Tecovas, you know that they make some of the best and most comfortable Western boots around. But what you might not know is that Tecovas has a store right here in St. Louis at Plaza Frontneck. Stop into their store and you'll find the finest handmade cowboy boots, jeans, belts, cowboy hats, and even apparel for both men and women. While you shop, enjoy complimentary drinks, boot shines, custom hat and boot branding, and more. Come visit the Tecovas store at Plaza Frontneck and let them help you find your new favorite pair of boots or your first pair of boots ever. Tecovas, don't go gently.
I hesitate to really talk people into entrepreneurship. I used to do this when I was younger. I'm 37, and I think in my late 20s or earlier 30s, which I know isn't that long ago, I think I tried to talk people into it more because it's great. I mean, you have your own, you have your own schedule, but the burden the burden is heavy, right? I mean, no one's gonna hold you accountable to it except for yourself. But I mean, if you don't do it, the bills don't get paid. So, and you have families. I mean, we have so many families now that rely on us to do what we do because they need a paycheck, and so that I don't take it as casually as I used to. I think the bigger we've gotten, but I would say. If you're going to do it, sooner than later, because you have so much less to lose. You start having kids, you start getting down a career path that's really promising, maybe not, going to make you millions of dollars, but, a really solid, stable career. It's really hard to say goodbye to that. And so I'm really lucky that I started our company when I was 29 because we didn't have kids. I had a really great job, probably a pretty promising career, but I wasn't leaving a ton of money on the table, know?
And it was something you could always go back
and
to.
I could always go live in my parents' basement. Not everyone has that luxury. We had that luxury. I mean, we could have, stayed in a bedroom at my parents' house if it failed. So I think, do it while you're young, do it while you're passionate. Don't do it if you're, too afraid because it is a scary thing. I'll say that.
That's good advice. We started the company in 2019. I was 23.
Wow.
And I had no obligations at all. My wife was still in college. We were just dating. But if I had to do it now, I tell people that same thing is like now with a newborn, there's no way that I would take a risk and leave not even a 6-figure salary, just a salary, regardless what it is, to do it. Like we lived on nothing for a long time, but we didn't need anything. And we need stuff, which is unfortunate, but it's like we literally did not need anything.
And you don't know what you don't know too. And I love that. I couldn't agree more. People ask me, would you do it again? And I don't think I would do it again now.
I feel the same way.
I'm actually quite certain I wouldn't do it again now. But no, do it yeah, you have to love it, because if you are doing it to make money, or if you're doing it to be famous, which works sometimes, I don't know. I've never been a celebrity, never will be, so it doesn't matter. Don't take that advice if you're out there for that. But I think it has to be like purely passion based, and you have to have a good idea. So vet it out. But I had 100 people tell me don't do it, and I probably should have listened, but I'm glad I didn't.
Right. And just have all the facts, because a lot of things you can start, like we could start our business with little to no capital, but a lot of businesses that people have these ideas with take multiple 7 figures of capital to get off the ground, and you have to have good partnerships and stuff. But yeah, I think I agree with you on that fact. Like if you asked me today if I would do it all over again, I'm like, dude, that was a tough 5 years. That was a long 5 years.
Now. I mean, it's a different. The risk is like way higher. You know, we have three boys, and 6, 4, and 1, and I couldn't put their livelihoods at risk probably at this point.
Yeah.
And,
so you got an interesting home then, little 3 boys running around, 3 crazy kids.
It's nuts. This is like a break for me.
I know, that's what I was saying. This is nice to have an excuse to go out.
Yeah, but no, I don't know. I try not to give advice, because I didn't take advice when I was that age, and I certainly should have probably.
Do you have mentors now?
I had a really amazing mentor at the very beginning of the business. He built an incredible e-commerce business long before e-commerce was a thing, and he just helped me. It's funny. It took me 2 years to realize I don't think he gave me any advice. He just asked me the right questions throughout the process.
Spark things.
And that experience, having a mentor, is insanely valuable, and it's really hard to kind of find one. I'm really lucky. I met one working the floor of a restaurant. It's so hard. People are like, I need to go find a mentor, and it takes a really special person to mentor someone. You have to really invest time and energy, and you have to be understanding and kind. And I hope someday I can mentor some young guys and ladies that are doing special things. But it's just really tough to find one. But yeah, I highly recommend finding one. Do you have advice on that? I mean, did you have a mentor?
I don't have a mentor. I have a lot of people that I look up to that I can text and ask questions to, but not anybody dedicated to like specific, like not like a dedicated, but there's no formal mentor unless you're in a program, which we are looking at doing things like that. Like I definitely invest in coaching and in education. I think that's important. My wife's an educator. She's a school teacher too. So same thing as your mom, but she harps on me about the education thing, is like, you have to keep getting better. And especially in our world, it changes. Like what we did in 2019 is completely different now. And same with your world, I'm sure too. And being ahead of the curves with technology, and being ahead of the curves with everything. But I want to talk a little bit more about St. Louis. We're talking about Bordeaux a lot. It seems like you keep going back to that space. Maybe that's your bucket list spot. No. But no, it's good. I want to talk about being based in St. Louis. What do you love about that? But I know that also probably comes with challenges too. But it might not, because you're right in the heart of everywhere you want to go. So tell us about what it means to be based in St. Louis, and then kind of like how that affects your business and what you do all over the world.
We moved the business here in 2019, early 2019. That at the time we had 3 wineries. We had 2 wineries, and we had just been starting our 3rd. It was crazy to move to St. Louis. Everyone told us, move to Napa or whatever.
You were just having your first boy.
We had we had a 1-year-old at the time. We were, or I guess he was, just over 2 years old. The idea, really, I give my wife credit. She was like, "What? We can do this from anywhere. We have different locations we make wine. We don't need to physically be at one, because if we're at one, we're neglecting the other. And my job isn't winemaking anyway. So we started looking at it. I remember we had a trip here. My wife's from Maryland, but we had a trip here in 2018, and it was the first time we'd spent maybe a month in St. Louis since we'd been married. And she got to see all the different pocket neighborhoods like Tower Grove and Midtown and Central West End and, Webster and Clayton. And it was the first time we kind of like were here long enough to go do stuff other than the nice restaurants and things. And seeing her fall in love with St. Louis reminded me how much I loved St. Louis, and then we started just kind of thinking, hey, this could really work. And then when we did move here, we moved down to the city. I'm pretty passionate about people going to the city. I especially think the Landing is incredible. And
just there this morning.
Downtown. Oh, really?
I was over at 612 North.
Oh, no way.
With the So Hospitality guys.
We're like exactly across.
Yeah. Them. I parked in that lot right across the street.
Oh,
from
so
them.
funny. But when we moved here, we were really small. In fact, Ellie and I, for many days, were just two people in an office. We had other employees in other places, but in the St. Louis office, there were two people, and it's grown quite a bit since then. We now have basically the entire floor of the Woody Hardware building. Nice. But
yeah, I saw in the back of your Zoom call, you had that really nice little wine.
Yeah.
I was like, that's fancy.
Yeah, you gotta come down.
That's cool. I do believe in the city too. Like we're based in the city as well, and I think it's important. And the Landing especially. I mean, you guys are seeing a huge upcoming area there. There's lofts everywhere. There's more activity going down there.
Yeah, and I want people to, it's not going to get better if people don't come down. It's especially during the workday. It's a beautiful place to be. The Landing especially is a little oasis in downtown. But moving here was really pivotal for us. We just by chance happened to have a ton of Midwest employees based in other places. Like we have a Midwesterner in Italy, and our Napa tasting room is run by a St. Louis guy.
Nice.
So I think we're more Midwestern than we're anything else. And that's been great because our customers, and, in Napa Valley especially, there are so many amazing hospitality experiences, but there are a lot that make you feel not super welcome. And we're these jolly old Midwesterners like, hey, come in. We're so happy you're here. We love you being here. Instead of, you're lucky to be here. We're like, hey, we're really happy you're here. Yeah. So that kind of mentality and all of that's really helped. We've now, I would say, pretty much made a really firm commitment to being in St. Louis forever. We're starting a hotel company as well. Even though it's Europe-based hotels, we're going to be here in St. Louis. So nice. I love the city. I think it's so easy to criticize the city, but it's back to the whole confidence thing. I think we need to know what we're good at and what we're not good at, and we just move forward from that.
St. Louis offers a unique place to grow a business too, because of not only the affordability but also just the scalability of being able to have that floor in a building. There's not many places that you could afford to have that, in other cities, and obviously remote work is everything. Now we can do remote work, but there still needs to be a place to connect. But no, that's awesome. I think it's really cool that you guys are connected, and I'm glad that we're able to kind of tell that story. I wasn't even aware, of that you guys were based here. I had your wine at Louis.
It's kind of weird, right?
No, it is, but it's like, how do you tell that story?
Yeah.
And it's unique that you tell that. Like maybe it's pop-ups, maybe it's more tastings and you guys are probably doing these things, but
we have a really great presence here, and we're really lucky. And the other thing to say about St. Louis is I have a million things to say, but we have an incredible food culture here. Yeah. We have some of the most passionate sommeliers in town. The Alicia and Anthony and
Madrina.
Yeah, Madrina.
Yeah, and then Anthony's
now actually with us with a Burgundy winery, Alberby show. But even like restaurant owners that are really incredible wine people like Mark Hinkle, Matt McGuire, Ben Paremba, Gerard. I mean, there are so many reasons St. Louis far outperforms on food and wine. So that's huge. And then, I think beyond that, I feel like St. Louis wants to support St. Louis companies, which is something we didn't really feel when we were Dallas based. We had decent support, but it was far from like a pride of this is coming from our city. It is wild that we are this, I don't know, what are we, 3 million?
3 million in the metro, from like St. Charles County to like South County to St. Louis.
That's a pretty big city.
Yeah.
But in the wine industry, in our like really high end wine industry, the web of connections to St. Louis is really quite insane. And I don't know the reason
all
for
over
that.
the country. Like you're like, oh, that person's
All over the
from
world.
St. Louis. Yeah, all
I mean,
over the world. Yeah.
we'll be in Bordeaux and have like a friend at the winery next door. It's crazy.
Yeah. I've been noticing that when I travel. I'm like, wait, you're from St. Louis too? But like you think of it as a small city because of the city limits is only 300,000. Yeah. But like everybody grew up in Webster, Kirkwood, Clayton, St. Charles, wherever. Yeah. But no, that is interesting. Like we do punch a lot of people that come on here, and I think it was Kevin Limp from Four Hands is like St. Louis punches above their weight in a lot of categories.
Far above.
And we have this chip on our shoulder. But when you go to market, it's like, yeah, we're from St. Louis. We're proud to be here. But you guys are all over the world. So I want to keep going on St. Louis. We got to talk about your STL bucket list here. So, you know, if I'm out, it's sunny, it's summer, where's a bucket list spot that I need to go grab a glass of wine from?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many like that's exactly the beauty of St. Louis is there's so many amazing places to go. And so many, you know, our national sales manager and I were just talking about this the other day. It's like there are so many places I haven't even been to that I've been wanting to go to in St. Louis for like months, right? Maybe a year, you know. But I mean, the places we end up going the most tend to be the places where our friends are. You know, so we love Louis, of course, and probably go to Louis. I don't know, a couple times a month.
Nice.
It's become an addiction. We love everything Matt does. So we love Wrights. We love Louis. I'm so excited for his new store to open next door. We love Olive and Oak, O&O Pizza. Honestly,
great spots.
O&O's
a good spot.
Webster
for the kids
in
too.
general right now is just so fun. And Madrina across the street is incredible. So I mean, I think like neighborhood wise is kind of how I look at it. So in Clayton, I love Bar Moro, Wrights, Louis.
That's a good street. Yeah,
I like
the car's right there.
Pinot, Bistro La Florizon.
Yeah, that's a really good street.
Fantastic little corner, and we live about 2 minutes away from there, so that's great.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, Pastaria is right there. There's just so many great spots. Sasha's. Talk about a glass of wine outside. I mean, Sasha's
that rooftop patio into
both
one.
Shaw and Clayton. I mean, they're fantastic places to go. Love the rooftop. Casa Don Alfonso, 801 Fish for a happy hour. Get an amazing glass of wine. Right. 801 Steak or Chop next door. You know, if I'm out in Chesterfield, of course, we'll pop into like Annie Gunn's or Westchester. I think. You know, when I'm in the city, by the way, especially Central West End through, downtown West is just booming with new spots that I haven't even been to. They're so fantastic.
It's hard. Like you got to get out of Wydown and like go explore some of these. But it's like with a family, that's like how we are now. It's like, okay, we have 2 date nights this month. We have a babysitter for 2 nights. These are the 2 nights we're going. We're going to go to our lucky trues that we know. Because it's like when you go to an experience, and that's why it's so important in hospitality to be on point. Yeah. But yeah, downtown West, there's an area over there. My friend Elliot owns the Biscuit Joint, which is
oh, cool.
On Washington.
I haven't been, but I keep hearing about it.
Yeah, he's great. He's a fine dining chef. He just opened that spot. He does private dinners there as well, which I need to get you guys hooked up with. And then across the street is that wine bar, Vidiera. She does an amazing job over there.
Yeah, I haven't been.
And then there's a brewery. There's a bunch of stuff owned by the same guy is like developing that area, Jason, and he's doing a really good job of like connecting Central West End to the city. There needs to be ways to like connect neighborhoods because
it's
I feel
starting
like
to happen. I mean, from Forest Park to the soccer stadium to Union Station, it's almost completely contiguous now with development, which is so exciting.
What I think about next is that area between Soulard and Busch Stadium where you guys are on the landing
agree.
Is Broadway South. Is right there. There's like Broadway Oyster Bar. There's all these classic spots, but like there needs to be a way to be able to walk to Soulard without just walking through nothing to get there.
Have you caught wind of this whole Broadway South?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's really exciting.
Which that'll help some, but it's like then it takes like people to then move down there, which I'm sure they will. But
it's tough. I mean, all the development pockets, they do tend to siphon people from other places. But I think in general, people just want to go out, Gordon Ramsay just opened his restaurant on the landing in the Four Seasons. I don't know what people know about Gordon Ramsay. Of course, he's a TV personality and kind of a, crazy TV personality, but he has almost 20 Michelin stars. He has some of the best restaurants in the world. And
I just met him last Friday. I was doing photos.
Yeah.
for them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
I was there at the grand opening party.
Yeah. I think that's huge for, I mean, that
Yeah.
that says so much about St. Louis that first of all, we have two iconic luxury hotels, the Ritz and the Four Seasons.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have two out of town powerhouse restaurateurs coming in. Casa Don Alfonso is a far less known, but 2 Michelin star restaurant out of Sorrento.
And this was his first place in America, right?
First place in the U.S. Yeah,
Yeah.
he has a Canadian
Canadian,
location at the St. Regis Toronto, I believe. But the Iaccarino family investing in St. Louis, Gordon Ramsay being in Four Seasons. It's so cool that we have that, and we have all these incredible local
so they said that he
restaurateurs.
served 26,000 guests in 72 days or something.
I'm just
like
not
that.
even remotely surprised.
I mean, it's crazy.
I
He
love
was
Gerard, and I
really-
loved his concept there too.
Yeah.
But it's really tough to get people downtown. So if it's a celebrity chef that's going to do it, heck yeah, let's do it.
He was really nice.
Yeah.
He was really great when I
Yep.
met him. His team they're serious, the PR team, but they're quick, dude. Like
Yeah.
it was quick, but yeah, the party was nice, and it was just stations. We didn't actually get to sit down and I haven't done dinner there yet.
Let's do it. It's right down the street from us. So.
Yeah, let's go. I was at the landing today. I saw that there's like a little coffee shop open in there. So I talked to some of the team over where you guys are at of like trying to like activate that area.
Yeah.
And then the lofts, obviously there's beautiful lofts down there. A lot of
Vantas is doing an amazing job.
yeah, that's
down
what it was.
there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So being able to activate that, but we're in Midtown. We're over on North Grand, like kind of we're in the On Guard Arts Hotel.
What an incredible area. Also, I mean, like you don't.
The Kranzbergs are doing a good job over there.
God,
Yeah.
you have. I mean, that hotel is game changing. The rooftop bar. They had I think a brief stint with a celebrity chef, but it's the same. It's Midtown used to be Slough and a couple other things, and now it's just so much more. And that's a short jump from Central West End, and that's a short jump from Cortex. And
You mentioned Ben and the Del Mar Maker District, that street that connects the West
can
End.
we talk about that for a second?
Yeah. I mean, I work with them, so I know.
Yeah.
I was at Florentine when they opened, and then across the street at Esca, and then Elia is moving down there next to. Have you drove by the
We
Steve's
go
Hot
to
Dogs and
church
Fountain?
right at Clara and Del Mar,
Okay.
which is not like an incredible. Or not like a historically incredible part of town. I mean, architecturally, yes. Historically, yes.
I know exactly where that's at.
And
yeah.
then, obviously, the incredible development across the street, the Del Mar Divine.
Yeah.
But his ability to move his restaurants into a neighborhood that needs love, and then all of a sudden the neighborhood becomes like incredible.
know it.
How
Yeah.
cool is that? He did it
Yeah.
at Botanical Heights. He's doing it in Del Mar.
Well, not only you move your restaurants, but then open 2 new restaurants at the same time.
I have a lot of energy and I'm always doing stuff, but sometimes I look at guys like Ben and I'm just like, man, or like Mark Hinkle. They're unstoppable restaurateurs. And
it all comes back to team, and the teams that are behind those people. And it's like, you have to have a vision, and there's visionaries and then there's executors, but like he could bring his restaurants to anywhere. And same with a lot of these people. And I think Ben and I had him on the show probably last summer before all this stuff happened, but it's like taking a neighborhood that was once less loved. What he did, like the deli was the first part, was bringing the deli to the Del Mar
Divine, I
Divine.
believe.
Yeah, and then taking these neighborhoods. But soon enough, all that real estate is going to go through the roof. People are going to move over there. And the same thing with Botanical Heights. You can't even buy a house in Botanical Heights for less than $500,000. And that area 20 years ago was...
And I think what's cool about Del Mar is there's a pretty low chance of it being overly gentrified. There's so much of North U City and far west city limits right there that are, I mean, if he can even impact that part of town 20-30%, it's such a win for everybody,
and that's how you build a legacy, and that's what we want in our businesses.
I love that he's like civically minded in doing that, I really applaud that, because it takes guts to go out and put your restaurant in a place that doesn't have other great restaurants nearby. So good for him.
Yeah.
Good job, Ben.
That's awesome. But yeah, man, I appreciate you for coming on. I think it's cool to hear the Fraîche story, try some of the wine. I'm already on my third glass. If you guys haven't been watching me, I get nervous. I drink because I usually drink water, but I'm like, this is right here. So I always just drink stuff.
I know, we really did do some damage.
I know Ellie's waiting to get a refill for sure before she goes home. But to wrap things up, I want to, let people know how they can support you. So maybe give a shout out to some of the stores that they can purchase stuff at. You guys have an e-commerce brand, stuff like that?
We do, yeah. We definitely, on our website, fresh.wine, you can go to each winery, and we have great wine clubs and really cool things. In fact, our component wine club is up for top 10 wine club in the country this year, which is through USA Today.
Is that
pretty
the Napa,
crazy.
Napa one?
It's Napa, Bordeaux, Provence, what we're drinking right now, actually.
Okay. Because that was the first one you launched, the component one.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of the foundational winery. But no, we've got great wine clubs, of course, and we love that. But really, since this is a St. Louis podcast, I'd rather people go out and drink it at the restaurants and buy it at the shop. So Clayton Winehouse has become an incredible partner of ours. They do a fantastic job kind of telling our story, and Chris and team there have been amazing. That
little basement thing there.
It's so cool.
Unbelievable. It's like this, I went there for an event one night, and it's beautiful there.
They're killing it. And then of course, we have so much support from St. Louis restaurants. There's very few restaurants in town that don't carry our wine, but the ones who have really invested in what we're doing, like the Hinkles at Olive and Oak or O&O Hospitality. So all of their restaurants, Truffles in Ladue, if people want to go for something really classic, it's fantastic. 801 Fish and Chop, Casa Don Alfonso. We've been really, really blessed to have, Madrina, Louis, so many great places. Miley. How cool is that? Our Riesling is by the glass at Miley, like one of my favorite classic restaurants.
I go to Miley actually after the podcast almost every Tuesday after the podcast, I go to Miley.
That's so good.
Because I hit it on the way back to the city. And then Nudo obviously is right across the street from here where we're at right now. But
it's so good.
It's unbelievable. I didn't know you guys had that wine by the glass today. That's cool.
It's kind of like a badge of honor.
That's my takeout thing. That's my takeout thing there. So
actually, go drink there. I mean, they have a really good...
I see people every time I grab takeout. I see like a couple people just sitting at the bar, not even eating. They're just like sitting there having a drink.
It's like shockingly a good place to drink. They have really fantastic. Angela Ortman did the wine list with.
That's who I just saw there.
Oh, really?
I saw Angela there after the podcast 2 weeks ago, and Angela was on our podcast too during.
Cool.
She was doing an event. And she was just sitting there having a drink, but she's friends with all those people over there. So Miley, the rapper, the daughter, is a friend of mine, and we've had her on the show too. And then Quee, I've been trying to get Quee on for a long time. That dude's busy.
You've got to do the podcast.
Yeah, he's busy, man. Every time I see him, he's like, "Bro, did you email me?" I'm like, "Yeah."
But no, I couldn't be more thrilled. Even Schnucks at Clayton and Lindbergh, we just have so much support, and obviously we'd love to keep growing in the city. We'd love for it to be like a household name in St. Louis. But we understand there's so many awesome wines out there, and I'm deeply grateful to be in St. Louis. Really proud of the city, and it's cool to invest in a place and make it your forever home for everything we're doing. It's really cool.
That's awesome. Michael, I appreciate you for coming on the podcast. So for all those listening, guys, go support the website. But like I said, go out to the restaurants and actually ask for it at the bar. We're going to be putting out some videos after this podcast comes out, showcasing some of these amazing restaurants. Excited to go to Truffles. Haven't checked that off my bucket list yet. Excited to go to Louis, see those guys again, and do some video and get that going. So we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Today, they rep St. Louis, yeah. They rep St. Louis. They rep St. Louis.